I'm Doug Katz, and we've got with me James Dehuff, and we're here at the TPM Summit 2024, live from Mountain View in California. And James, we're going to be talking about AI and AI, and particularly in how it works with TPMs. And you just gave your speech just a moment ago, right, or a little bit
Yeah,
earlier?
yeah, that's right. They're earlier this morning.
Yeah. So, yeah, he's known for his TPM craft, his newsletters. You were here last year as well, right? So you spoke at the summit. So give the audience a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start my intro with the things that are most important to me personally. I'm a husband and father of three kids, and I live in Houston, Texas. So coming out to California today is quite the treat, and it's fun to connect with TPMs beyond the remote experience that we normally get in the digital world, like LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
it's really great to be here. I work right now at a company called HashiCorp, and if you haven't heard of HashiCorp, the way that you can think about them is they make tools to help solve problems related to infrastructure management and security and secrets management for companies. So my specific focus and domain in HashiCorp today is on all of the infrastructure, security, privacy, compliance related things that go on, and supporting those efforts across all the organizations and into R&D for completing and delivering on those objectives. So that's kind of what's professionally going on. I'm also actively writing the TPM Craft newsletter, which has been a fun journey. It started off as just an intention for me to write for myself, to crystallize my own thoughts, and it's kind of snowballed into what it is today. And just trying to lean into that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So like your own journey, your own knowledge journey, and you kind of think aloud, and then people would kind of chime in, or you kind of have others talking about the same topics, and you kind of have some sort of conversations. Well, what brought you to this year's topic on AI prompting for TPMs? Coming from where you're working at HashiCorp,
Sure.
to your own personal passion, I guess, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard of generative AI and how transformative it's been. Specifically with ChatGPT, when that was released, it really opened up this floodgate of possibilities of how we interact with generative AI. So, like a lot of people, I was really curious of how to use it. And so my first experiments with it were mainly in my personal life. So, for example, I would use generative AI like ChatGPT to generate these unique and compelling bedtime stories for my kids. That was the first way that I really experimented with applying it to my life, and I found a lot of benefit from it. We could create these stories for my kids with their names in it, and it was unique every time. And so that was somewhat the first step of the generative AI journey, and it just kind of has progressed from there. And where I am today with that journey is similar to a lot of people, just continuing to experiment and discover. And so my talk today focused on how we can use generative AI, especially in like just a simple chatbot experience, within our daily jobs without the constraint, or I should say within the safe constraints of not sharing any proprietary information about company work that might put anything at risk. So that's quite a common constraint that people have when using generative AI is, well, I can't send up my company info, so I probably can't use it.
Right.
But in my frame of mind, I looked at that and I said, well, that's just a constraint. Like, there's got to be ways that we can use it and benefit from generative AI in our jobs without essentially having to reveal any confidential proprietary information, because there's lots of situations that we find ourselves in as TPMs where you don't have to reveal anything private, and it's still really beneficial. And so I basically reviewed 3 use cases and some general practices to follow when using generative AI.
Yeah, and some of our people who work at big companies, they do have their own sort of sandbox generative AI tools that they use. Amazon, and I'm at Walmart, we have our own as well. But so when you talk about constraints, do you? And for the benefit of those who haven't watched the speech earlier on, do you maybe run through some of the scenarios again? And I guess, do you think there's a way that companies can build their own models in a practical way without having to overinvest and have something that's safe enough where you don't have to sort of kind of walk on eggshells, so to speak, to kind of figure out what can you share or cannot share, and because ideally you want to make it convenient so that you can literally just upload something without having to redact things or do that. So what are your maybe you can give us some insights?
Yeah, I'll start with the first part of what you mentioned of what are the use cases that I went through, and then we can kind of go into the next part of what are those constraints and like what would it look like if we could unlock that with the business. So what I focused on in my presentation were three generic use cases. There's a lot more that are useful, but the three that I focused on, let's talk about the first one, was ramping up fast. So at any TPM, you've been in a situation where you're thrown into a program and there's this domain that may be new to you or you don't have as much experience in. And so historically, the best way to ramp up in a domain was talking to people, which that is still really the best way. Reading books, watching YouTube videos, just, there's a lot of resources out there, but the introduction of a new tool like generative AI to ramp up in a new domain can really accelerate all of it. So that's the first use case we looked at. And that one concluded by, as you ramp up in this new domain, it concluded with the fact that generative AI won't necessarily solve all those problems for you. But you can end that conversation with generative AI by saying, give me the right questions to ask to know how to apply what I've learned in this new domain to my current company. So for example, give me 3 questions for product management that I can ask about the new things I've learned with GDPR. And so then you can go and you can start to work through how your company is currently postured with GDPR, and same with engineering, right? You could go in and say, give me 3 good questions, high quality questions that I can go ask. And so that way you're showing up to the table as a value adding member of the group. You've ramped up fairly effectively in a short amount of time when conversing with AI.
I mean, a lot of times you're running into a project where you interact with subject matter experts in a field that you may not have interacted with. Maybe it's data scientists or maybe other groups, and you want to be able to make sure you ask the right questions. Make sure you understand, how to approach them and how to kind of see how they kind of engage as well. That's a good way to get running fast, I guess, in a project.
And I've used it a handful of times myself, and it's definitely helped me show up as a valuable member. So the second use case that we looked at was all about documentation, and this idea that you're running a program, you're trying to keep things on track, keep the momentum up, and sometimes the documentation part can kind of slow us down because we have to consider, well, what's the structure of this document? Are there any templates out there? Because I want to focus on the content, but the structure is kind of slowing me down. And generative AI can help assist in that. So the example I gave in my talk was disaster recovery testing documentation. So a very, very specific example where, an SRE team may be short-staffed. I don't know what the issue may be, but with enough prompting and guided prompting across the principles of good prompt engineering, you can get to a really decent starting point for structured documentation really fast. And it can incorporate best industry practices that may not come readily to your mind, And so it just accelerates that journey of creating a starting point for
Yeah.
valuable documentation.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's funny you mentioned data disaster recovery. I've recently had to do a similar thing with PII information in lower environments.
Sure.
And and our distinguished or engineer or the person who's supposed to drive it was out for a few days. So I needed to come up with some good questions, a templates of good questions, and a structure to do an audit of what is in lower environment, what kind of information, highly sensitive, medium sensitive, and kind of ask the right questions to figure out things like is it at rest, is it in transit, all those different things, and as TPMs, having that prompt really helped me kind of dive into, making sure that we're driving the engineers to the right direction. Because if you just leave them to their own intentions, they may not put the right level of scrutiny. So you kind of need to have that guardrail, I guess.
And that's a really good example where you didn't have to share any proprietary information about the company. Generative AI knows a lot of things.
Yeah.
So it knows good questions to ask to vet lower environments, what PII data is, and help them evaluate it. That's a really cool example.
And I think it's actually a good practice to have, in a way, having a system that's not within the company allows you to makes you feel conscious of what you are passing through, so that you have the discipline. You sort of build that discipline. Something I wish engineers would also have.
Oh yeah.
So they know, okay, I'm not going to copy a production data of somebody into the dev environment and kind of use that.
Yeah, those guardrails are helpful.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. And are there any other use cases you see now or in the future that you think generative AI is going to be instrumental for TPMs in the next year or couple of years?
Yeah, one of the main points in the talk I shared earlier was that the skill of prompt engineering and being able to use generative AI is going to become an essential foundational skill, just like being able to use Google Docs, Google Sheets, Excel, whatever, base technology we're all accustomed to using. It's going to enter those ranks, right? So the number of use cases are probably going to be pretty broad, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing companies having more internal private generative AI situations. So for example, I know Google has their Google Suite. There's a lot of tech companies that use that Google Suite, and incorporating it right into that certainly has a lot of complexities, but the opportunities are there. So for example, think of being able to create a GPT or some language model specifically for onboarding.
Yeah.
Like you get a new engineer, you get a new TPM, and there's this language model that is trained to help somebody onboard. And so that person now has somebody they can contact all the time, ask these questions, and this AI agent knows its job is to help onboard. And so it can help surface documentation. It can help this new employee understand how to, the culture of the company and how things are usually run, as long as it's documented somewhere, right?
Right.
Which may be one of the complexities with having it, but it's just one example where that could be a really powerful use case in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even for TPMs to onboard new TPMs, to onboard junior TPMs, and documents that new TPMs would need, perhaps even some sort of a RACI or some sort of a lay of the land, I guess, where other stakeholders would be in a program as well. And we know that Atlassian, some of the tools that they have, which TPMs use as their sort of bread and butter for the day-to-day work, are they're sort of implementing some of the generative AI stuff. Have you had much experience working with any of those TPM or management tools?
Yeah, so if you take a look at Confluence, this is just a small example. It's not very extensive right now, but if you take a look at Confluence, it has at least the instance that we have right now in HashiCorp. It has a new tool, a new button at the top right where you're looking at a page and you can click, I think it says summarize page or something.
Right.
And I've used that on several occasions because there's pages I come to that are dense, very long, and I think to myself, like, I don't know how I'm gonna absorb all the stuff in here. And so being able to even have that button to say, please summarize this page, it gives me a frame of reference to say, okay, this is generally what these pages aim to communicate to me. And that when I then switch to like skimming the page, I know what I'm looking for now a lot better than if I were to just do I guess a dry run on the content itself. So that's a small example of something I've already started to use. We have that in HashiCorp today.
Yeah.
So
no, that's definitely very useful. I also like to sort of use a similar sort of feature to kind of put things into a table, because for me, I like to visually have things broken down into sort of rows where I kind of look at them. And similar, I guess, and a lot of people are, outside of TPMs and meetings are using transcription and the ability to summarize and add action items to meetings as well. I mean, it's very widespread now, but I use it all the time for every meeting as part of my meeting to send out action items after the meeting. It helps me by not, I don't have to physically jot down things myself. Let the tool do that. It allows me to focus on answering good questions, answering questions, getting to good answers.
That's fantastic.
So, but that's, I think, yes, AI is, I guess it's not replacing TPMs, it's making it easier for us to kind of focus on our, core competencies and letting the things that could be automated or transcribed and all that. I'm interested in so working at HashiCorp, I'm curious if you have any thoughts or insights into, when you manage secrets and things like that. And do you think there's any role for Gen AI in that space? Would you use or to find PII information or things without using AI rather than just through logs and things like that? Do you know if there's any work in that space?
I'm not a domain expert in that area. I don't. My current focus in HashiCorp isn't in that space, but I could definitely see use cases where not just generative AI, but other forms of AI are combined with generative AI to accelerate work. So for example, if you're doing some type of investigation to either, to find secrets or PII, let's think about that one. There's lots of tools where AI can go in and potentially find all these things. But the real interesting use case we have now is if you add generative AI into the mix, now you have a way where you can export all of those findings that may be in kind of abstract data that's collected. And now you can summarize it in human readable language and the results can be consumed way faster.
Right.
So I think that's going to bridge a lot of gaps, especially another example, generic is like predictive analytics, predictive AI. Combine it with generative AI as the layer on top, and suddenly you have a way to translate maybe these complex predictions into, hey, but this is what it means in human readable language.
Right. So there's two components to be able to predict and then summarize or put in digestible format for us to be able to know what to do with that information.
Exactly.
So
there's all the different flavors of AI and kind of stack them together creates some really interesting results.
Yeah. Let's talk about your newsletter. So the TPM Craft.
Sure.
In one of your recent articles, you mentioned TPMs are misunderstood. Tell us a little bit about that, and in a simple framework, I guess we can kind of like discuss.
Sure. TPMs generally are misunderstood, right? If you go to a number of different partners in a company, especially if they don't have a super strong TPM presence, you go around and you ask them the question, hey, what does a TPM do?
Yeah.
You'll get all sorts of answers of what they think a TPM does. And that type of misalignment is really interesting because you compare it to if you were to go ask them, hey, what does an engineer do?
Yeah.
Or what does a product manager do? Those answers are going to be a lot more consistent as you survey multiple stakeholders. So I think in the industry right now, it's not a surprise to many people that a TPM is growing in prominence and it's trying to find its footing to be understood consistently, not just inside of a company, but across companies too. And so, really, what in that specific article, what I kind of boil it down to is like, okay, what's your job? What does a TPM do? And ultimately, I for my own model and kind of framework of how I look at it is that TPMs drive things.
Yeah.
And so, okay, well, what do they drive? The acronym that I have used myself, this model that I've used myself, is the word CAPE. So CAPE. They drive clarity, they drive alignment, they drive progress, and they drive efficiency. So if a TPM is able to do all those things, that is high impact work that we're talking about. Driving clarity on what we're doing, why we're doing it. Often some of that will come from different roles, like maybe a product manager or some type of leadership role defining a vision. But making sure that that's crisp and clear is one thing that, even though we may not be responsible all the time for creating that vision, we do have a responsibility to make sure it's clear and understandable across everybody who reads it, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the alignment piece where now we've got the clarity. Are we all aligned on that's what we're doing? That's what we want. That's what we're aiming for. And then the third piece, driving progress. So we're kind of building on top of each other. So then we're moving that forward. We're getting closer to what that clarity wants. And then finally, efficiency. How good are we at doing that? So that's generally how I describe and help people avoid misunderstanding TPMs, is by saying this is what we drive: clarity, alignment, progress, and efficiency.
Right. And I mean, we demonstrate that. So when you talk about that, it's not just going to the engineer and saying we are going to be driving clarity, but by providing the artifacts, providing the processes and the tactics and the strategy, you're demonstrating that, and that's the sort of the source of proof that this is what we do, and that sort of hopefully provides a lot of clear understandings of what are we actually doing. How do we fit in this whole program?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And finally, let's we're here at the TPM Summit in beautiful Mountain View, flying in from sunny Texas. Are you enjoying the summit? What has stuck out for you the most today?
Oh man, I think the most important thing that I've experienced here today is the networking. Just being able to meet people. I've met a lot of people online through writing my newsletter and just being active on LinkedIn. So being able to bridge that physical world, the virtual world into the physical world is really great. And so that's part of the reason why I'm really excited that we're doing this podcast in between sessions, to try and help, the people who are virtual today to feel connected to what's going on, and to continue to have maybe a little bit more of an intimate setting to talk and to network and experience. So
and I mean, this is, it doesn't end today. Hopefully people stay connected. We can have conversations on LinkedIn, various online communities, our TPM trails, meetup events around the country that we have, and of course in the podcast, and of course in your newsletter as well. So we want to make sure that people can find you, look you up on LinkedIn, look up TPM Craft, and make sure to subscribe. And you'll get some good insights and information on how to share the event at TPM, hopefully, with all of us providing insights and learning from you, learning from others here.
Exactly. And I'll be trying to make sure that I provide resources. That's one of the jobs of my newsletters, to make sure that people know, what events are going on, what other networking or community related things are going on. So it's a great place to be able to be aware of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, James, this has been great. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day and the sessions, and we'll see you guys later.
Thank you, Doran. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Wait, when I'm supposed to turn this off? I was like looking for him. I didn't want to sound obvious. I'm like bat signal or something. But cool.
Just waving, hey, we're done here.
Awesome. It's great. Yeah. Oh,
Well, that was great. Thanks for doing the.
yeah. Did you grow up in Dallas? In Houston?
For most of my life.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I used to work for Whole Foods before my kind of because I was traveling to Austin all the time, so I love it there. Yeah, I would move there if it wasn't for my wife, if she wants to be in the West Coast. But I enjoy Texas.
Austin, we've been there a handful of times. And
Yeah, I go there for the barbecue. I go there for the everything. It's music. You can go out on a Tuesday night and be like in the main street. There's like music. There's people out and all that. It's
It's 6th Street. That's
I turned it off. Yeah, I was trying to get your signal like to stick around. You know? I know.
On you guys finished early.
That's okay. They got to
Like
enjoy it.
3-4 minutes. Yeah.
They got to see how tall we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Benefit.
Yeah. No, it's is the camera angle right? So it look from upwards downwards. It is. Yeah. It's
Yeah, we did say it looks fine.
okay. Let's.
Thanks for the interview once again.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, that's good. We'll post your links to the newsletter and stuff, and yeah, maybe we'll have you later on.
I'm already subscribed to your newsletter.
I'm for everyone else, yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, that's good. Yeah, check the LinkedIn. See everyone on LinkedIn. I'm curious.
Sorry?
We should check the LinkedIn things that went.
Are we running live on YouTube too?
Yeah.
Yes. LinkedIn, YouTube.
And on YouTube. I didn't know you were 47 views. It's pretty good considering advertised.
Hey, why 2 screens are showing?
What? What the hell? I knew this thing. I knew that the multi-screen crack thing.
The light did not end.
Nice.